Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Eric, and Brian with you here on Inauguration Day. It is a national holiday. Well, it's not really. I mean, nobody got off for the day for it. But, you know, hey, it's a day of celebration in the country. We are here to celebrate with you by talking about UCF sports here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Good, Jeffrey. I believe, wasn't there an animal? There's a national holiday for an animal. It's a National Penguin Day, so that's like a holiday.
Is National Penguin Day? Penguins are not native to America, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you a nationalist now? Or are you just a?
Oh, yeah, sure, okay.
Does that mean Danny DeVito could celebrate today as since he was the Penguin in Batman 2?
Oh, come on.
Oh, all right. Good checking.
Oh, gosh. Wasn't it? Let's see. What is it? What do we have? Today is it is January 20th. You know what else it is? National DJ Day.
Wow.
So we can take that, yeah. And then National Cheese Lovers Day.
Big up to Daryl Mack. You know, he's going to do big things at up in ODU.
And National Cheese Lovers Day. I like cheese. Cheese is good. So,
yes.
Wow, we've already gone way off the reservation on the show. All right, we got a lot to talk about here on this. That's our tribute to our friend Trace Trulko, who is a big fan of these things apparently. But we're going to talk about football. We got some little off-season moves for you. We got a new wide receiver coach who's a familiar name to college football fans. We have an interview with a UCF legend, Chad Mottola, maybe the greatest hitter in UCF history, UCF baseball history. And, of course, the hitting coach now for the Tampa Bay Rays, the defending American League champions. He spent some time with you two fellas and plenty more. And this is the first of two shows we got this week because a little bit later, Eric and I were going to do our standalone volleyball show, our volleyball preview for 2021. We're going to have all kinds of previews coming at you here left and right in the next few weeks because the fall sports that are now, well, for this year, our spring sports are, we're going to have to preview those, plus the spring sports. It's going to be wild.
And we got one of the spring coaches, in fact, later in the show.
Right. And so we've got that. Bryan Koniecko is going to be with us here on the show as well. So there's a lot to talk about here on this show. But let's first talk about football. All right. First up, report from Football Scoop, and then later Pete Thamel talked about it. UCF has not made an official announcement yet, but apparently the new wide receiver coach is going to be Kodi Burns, who comes from Auburn. He played at Auburn, then became a grad assistant and a coach at Auburn. Darrell Wyatt's gone, and in comes Kodi Burns as the new wide receiver coach. If his name sounds familiar, it should. He actually played with Auburn not all that long ago. He played when Cam Newton was there. Actually won a national championship there in 2011. Didn't really amount to much as a pro, and so went right into coaching. Kodi takes over a wide receiver core that brings in some newcomers, notably Brandon Johnson, who's coming over from Tennessee as a graduate transfer. Had 5 rather productive years at Tennessee, but is finishing up here at UCF. But not a lot of production returning. Only 41% of the yardage from 2020 is coming back for UCF in the wide receiver core. and 2/3 of that 40% is Jalen Robinson. So there's going to be some work to do in the wide receiver core. Who would have thunk that after the good years that UCF had in the wide receiver core? But Murph, we will start with you. This wide receiver core is in need of a rebuild. Kodi Burns is going to be at least partially in charge of it. Talk about this move. What's the reaction?
I think it's interesting for me because I remember when Kodi Burns played at Auburn and he was a significant player for them and ended up catching a touchdown in the BCS championship game about a decade ago.
He's a good football player.
So it makes me feel old, which is always good. But he's worked with a lot of good players like Darius Slayton, currently on the Giants. There's 3 guys off of Auburn's current receiving core who have declared for the NFL draft, and the likelihood that I'd say 2 of them get drafted. I mean, he's been around to develop some pro talent, and it shows you that he can get the most out of some good players. So with UCF's receiving core now being pretty new, and even in the returning guys like Ryan O'Keefe, Ryan O'Keefe is like one of the more experienced players, but he really had like 1 season to show what he can do. Like before then, he was kind of a spot guy. And same with Amari Johnson, who really hasn't had a full-time role to shine and show what he can do. And he played it out of the slot a lot, mostly out of once the injury to Trey Nixon happened, he stepped up. He had to step up. So once that happened, he played a lot of snaps on the offensive side. Remember, scored a touchdown in Houston, back in his home state of Texas. Made some pretty dynamic plays, but again, a guy who's really only had 1 year really show what he can do, and then other than Jalen Robinson and maybe O'Keefe, like no one here in this receiving core has had more than 1 year to really show what they can do. So it's going to be pretty green for Kodi Burns to come in here and develop these guys, and even to get the most out of Brandon Johnson. He's a 5th-year guy, but working in a new system for him. It's going to be upon Kodi to help him with the acclimation process. So, look, coaches always get too much credit when things are going well, and too much blame when things are going, or not enough credit when things are going well, and too much blame when things are going poorly. So I don't know what to say yet. Well, once the season starts, and if the wide receivers are playing well, I hope people understand that some of that is probably due to Kodi Burns.
Yeah. You're right. The one part about that I did look at was, you were right on the money. It did make me feel old. The other thing that we wanted to kind of mention and touch upon too is now we're starting to see this roster take shape, Murph, right? And and by the way, thanks to Luke Saris, who on Black and Gold Banneret does have a transfer portal tracker that we put up there. So make sure you check that out when you can. But as far as how everything is sort of coming together, what are you seeing from guys leaving, guys sticking around? More importantly, I think that was expected, unexpected, at least at this point. We actually got word this week also that Ja'Kias Cradle is leaving to go back home to Georgia. He will actually play at Georgia State. Unfortunate because he came in so highly touted, a big target. Had a couple of opportunities. I think, of course, we remember he was called for an offensive targeting call in a game earlier this year that was pretty controversial. But, what are you seeing in terms of how the roster is shaking up as we move toward the spring? And what are some of the areas of concern that you have right now?
Well, I think the one thing with Ja'Kias is him leaving. You would like to see UCF get bigger wide receiver, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why they've got Brandon Johnson, because he's a big, thick body at 6'2", over 200 pounds, because they need that size in that core. You look at the guys they have,
exactly the same size as Marlon, right?
Marlon, I believe, was shorter than 6'2". I don't believe Marlon was 6'2". But regardless, I'm thinking in my head like he couldn't have been 6'2". But they really don't have a lot of size in that receiving core. Like Deontay Marks is 6'2", and then everyone else is 6 foot or shorter. And Ryan O'Keefe's 5'10", Jalen Johnson's 5'9". So they needed somebody like that. And and with Ja'Kias leaving and going back to his home state, it really just sort of accentuates the need for a big body which again, I'm sure that's one of the reasons why they went out and got a guy like Brandon Johnson. Like, I'm sure that was definitely on their minds. They knew that Jakias was leaving when they made that addition. So, but they're going to need someone else to step up there because, or maybe you could possibly see. I know we got teased it this season. Maybe this means that we'll see more out of the tight end position, and and the big bodies they have there with Jake Hescott coming back and Zach Marsh-Wojan, and those guys are huge, but we didn't really get to see them use as offensive weapons at all. Maybe that happens more, because you need those targets to bail out your quarterback, and UCF doesn't really have those guys who are proven right now. Trey Nixon was a big guy. Jacob Harris was 6'5". You've lost a lot of size. You lost a lot of size in that receiving corps. So, but I will say, Jeff, the thing that I forgot to mention on last week's show, but I wanted to mention here because we're talking about guys who are coming and going. So we knew that at least of a few of the players who were coming back for their added year of eligibility in this COVID season, everyone gets an extra year. We knew that Jake Hescock was coming back because he told us that. We knew that Noah Hancock and another defensive lineman whose name escapes me, God darn it, at the moment.
Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis came back.
We knew about Kalia Davis as well, but yeah, that's true. Kalia Davis and Noah Hancock were coming back. We knew that because Shane Burnham had told us that. But it was also interesting to find out last week about two offensive linemen coming back. Josh McMullen, offensive tackle, who's sort of been in and out of the lineup, has dealt with injuries. And then also Marcus Tatum, the grad transfer from Tennessee last year, is coming back as well. And so really, if you look at this UCF offensive line, it's really basically all intact coming back for next season. I mean, you're basically going to have anybody who played really substantial minutes of consequence, any large minutes of consequence, they're all back for next season. And that sort of cohesiveness, we talked about it early in the year. That's one of the reasons that why they were committing so many penalties early on. And so maybe with that, you just have an offense that runs smoother, flows. You're able to run your up-tempo offense more because those guys have been around each other now for going on 2 years. They're more in sync together.
Can I emphasize that too? Because I think it's such a great point. Back in 2016, Scott Frost's first year, I mean, in 15, the offensive line was a catastrophe in any way, shape, manner, or form you look at it. 2016, you could see it getting better. There was more talent on the offensive line, but they were still all very raw. And so, we saw a lot of instances where, Mackenzie Milton as a freshman was running around like a chicken with his head cut off because missed assignments, missed blocks, whatever. I mean, it's just an inexperienced offensive line. But that next year, in 2017, everyone came back on the offensive line, and look what happened. That for a good 2 years, that was the best offensive line in the American and one of the best offensive lines in the country. So are we going to see a repeat of that? Boy, I hope so. I mean, it certainly beats the alternative, doesn't it?
Well, then certainly, and then also you have to talk about, like, do you have the running backs available to make that that offensive line look good? Like, if the holes are there, that's great. But if you don't have the right backs to hit them, and me and Eric have talked about this on the show before. Like, we went through it last week with the guys who are leaving, and do they have enough with Bentavious Thompson and Demarius Good, Johnny Richardson, Anthony Williams, the freshman out of Orlando, like, RJ Harvey. Are those guys going to be good enough to make that offensive line look as good as it might? We don't know yet. And so, yeah, this offense has a lot of questions, which we really haven't had to answer many questions on the offense for a couple of years.
Interesting that it's the skill positions where the question marks lay now with UCF rather than the offensive line. Usually it's the last few years, UCF has been blessed with some amazing talent at the skill positions, but there's where the unanswered question is. By the way, Marlon Williams, you're right, Murph, is 6 feet tall. I could have sworn he was taller than that, just the way he played.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, he does play because he's so. Again, you saw that stat from Pro Football Focus this week. They Pro Football Focus ranked their top 100 players in college football this past season, and Dylan Gabriel and Marlon Williams were both in the top 100. And I believe it said that Marlon Williams led the FBS in tackles broken as a wide receiver. He had more than 20 tackles broken as a wide receiver. He plays so much bigger of a guy who's 6 foot, and it just, again, he reminds me so much of Deebo Samuel. When I see him play, he's like a Deebo clone. Debo again is a little bit more. They use him in like end rounds and running packages, and we haven't even seen UCF use Marlon in that way. But I don't think that doesn't mean he couldn't do it. I'm really looking forward to see what Marlon does at the next level, because with no matter his size, his play belies his size. He does not play like a guy who's 6 foot.
Yeah, I always saw him ever since he was a freshman year. I kind of viewed him as a power tailback playing wide receiver. To me, that's kind of how I always viewed him. That's just because that size at 6 feet tall, 215. You're right. I can't wait till he gets to the next level. All right, so things are starting to come together for the UCF roster for 2021. And, again, we should see a little bit more pulled together by the time spring practice. Do we have any idea on spring practice, by the way, Murph?
Oh, no.
Yeah, we're not even close.
We still haven't hit second signing day, Jeffrey. That's in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, who cares about that? The real
I will say, as much as I've enjoyed breaking down this roster, it's probably going to look different in about a few months. I will caution. This is not going to be the.
Well, yeah, we're going to have. The transfer portal, and there's no deadline on transfers, right? And it's not like free agency,
right.
So you can or it's not like there's a trade deadline, so you can add people via the transfer portal all the way up till the beginning of the season and during the season if need be. It's just a question of whether you can get them eligible. I think that's the real question. So
I think certainly guys will leave, but I think certainly UCF will add players even if guys don't leave. I think they have more spots available. I believe they had more than one when they added Brandon Johnson. So I think UCF's going to add a player or two as well before anybody leaves, if anyone else leaves. So yeah, this roster's going to look different. We'll talk about some other guys who will join when they join. But I do think you'll have somebody new to talk about before spring ball practice starts.
Yep, it's going to be it's a whole different way of doing business in recruiting now. It's interesting because it allows coaches a lot more flexibility and it allows the players a lot more flexibility. I think that's not a bad thing. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, our big interview, Chad Mottola, UCF legend from baseball.
Baseball, Murph, some baseball.
I know. We can almost hear the pings happening now, Brian Murphy. And we're going to talk with Chad Mottola, who's now the hitting coach, of course, for the defending American League champion Tampa Bay Rays, about his days at UCF and a lot more when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you. It's time to talk some baseball. We got a big interview this week. You two guys were able to pull together the interview that we were looking forward to for quite some time with UCF Baseball great Chad Mottola, highest draft pick ever at UCF, longtime minor league player, was an outstanding player in the minors, had a few cups of coffee in the majors, and went into coaching and is now the hitting coach for the Tampa Bay Rays. And Eric, I'll start with you on this one. We've been looking forward to this for a long time, and and I know Murph and Eric, you both have talked to Chad before in the past, but to sit down with him, this was a real treat.
It really is. It's a lot of fun. This is something that you will also be able to see on our YouTube page. Murph's going to write a little bit about Chad and the baseball. I know Murph getting back to the baseball writing a little bit, but Chad Mottola has had obviously a memorable career, a unique career, obviously helping the Tampa Bay Rays get to the World Series this October, representing UCF. But it's been a fascinating journey for Chad Mottola to get there. As you mentioned, Jeff, the highest draft pick in UCF baseball history, played a long time in the minors, as we'll talk about, and, of course, his journey to coaching, which has been very fascinating. But you mentioned he's one of the greats to wear the black and gold, played from 1992. We also talked about that and much more. Here now, Chad Mottola on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And joining us now here on the Black and Gold Banneret, he is a UCF Hall of Famer, of course, part of the Tampa Bay Rays coaching staff, hitting coach of the American League champion Tampa Bay Rays. I speak of Chad Mottola, who joins us here on Black and Gold Banneret. How you doing?
Great to be here. Hopefully we'll be in spring training soon, but it's one of these things. It's always great to represent UCF and come back home and still live in Orlando. So it's an honor to be here.
What has it been like? Have you had a chance to reflect on what you and the Rays obviously did getting to the World Series? I know it was such a unique season and they brought it. But yet to be in the World Series, and we were covering it from a UCF angle throughout the run, because you obviously made it as a coach there, joining there. Drew Butera is the only UCF alums to be a part of the World Series. Have you had a chance to reflect on the run?
I mean, mentally fatiguing for sure. It wasn't just the baseball side. It was the unique experiences of staying in the hotels, being away from everybody, being away from family the last month and a half, not being able to see them, eating out of a box, literally every meal, throwing away all the paper plates. So it was a struggle to make it through. It was a compliment to all the guys that they were going through the protocols, and actually just life outside of baseball was so tough. So it was one of those things that you reflect back and just realize, like, wow, we did the World Series, but not only did we make it to the World Series, we made it through the season, which there was plenty of times where we didn't think that was going to happen.
How just, I guess, surreal would be the word I would use to, like, you're in, like, let's say game 4 of that World Series is absolutely crazy. And you had to be sitting in that dugout thinking, like, I can't imagine what this stadium would be like if we were like in Tampa right now, which you would have been if you guys were, the visiting team, the lower seed, what the stadium would have been like for that kind of game. Was it surreal to sort of go through a World Series with, limited fans and in a neutral setting?
I mean, we became so accustomed to it. It was so nice to have fans in the stands, period. That was the first series that we had any fans at all. I think they said it was 12,500. It sure seemed like a lot more than that. I don't know if they stretched a little bit or followed everything perfectly, but that was plenty. I mean, for what we went through, we experienced the year before at the Trop in the games against the Astros. And it was amazing because, unfortunately, sometimes at the Trop, we're the home team, but the Yankees and Red Sox draw better. So it was the first time during the playoffs that we literally had 95% fans cheering for us. And it was something special. So it really would have been crazy for that to happen at home, but I don't think I could have felt any different. Like, the amazing play that happened, even if there was nobody there or 100,000 people cheering us on, the craziness that ensued in that game, and the Mikey Brosseau homer against Chapman, just the way that all came together. There was 2 experiences in life that completely different. I can't tell you which one was more special, but they just got there in different ways. I've been in pro baseball 29 years, and nothing has approached those 2 moments, to have them both in the same season. And then guys want to say, well, I wonder if this is a little different, a little tainted title for the Dodgers. No way. I mean, it was just, everything that happened was so special and didn't take anything away from the season that we put together.
What was it like, going through the postseason? You hosted Toronto in the opening round, but then you had to go to California. I mean, this is a postseason that's going to be documented. It's going to be written, documentaries and books are going to be written about. When you look back 10, 20 years ago, what was it like to be in California in such a unique setting? You played the Yankees, then the Astros, classic series, both of them going to distance, then the World Series in Texas. Like, this is neutral field. It's not I know you've always thought about the World Series, but you figured it would be either at home or on the road, not in like a unique neutral settings. What was it like?
I mean, it was crazy because not only did we stay away from the places, but we would be quarantined. So each hotel, the one in San Diego is 45 minutes away from the field. The one in Texas was 45 minutes away from the field. So it was one of those things that your whole day literally was either on the bus, going to and from the field. And it was, you never had that feeling of, okay, we're ahead of this, we get to catch our breath. It was definitely eating on the run. Always, the hotels did an amazing job of taking care of families, having all kinds of activities for the kids. So they made it as good as possible. But like I said, there was so much more going on other than baseball. Those guys had to literally just separate themselves from, and I know it was tough on me, especially for a month and a half being away from my family. The sacrifices the guys made, the hotel, the sacrifices they made, it was so impressive, just the way everything came together, all the employees respecting our space and kind of going through the protocols and staying away from their families as well. A lot of stuff that people didn't realize behind the scenes just to put it together. So I think that's why, I don't know if we've recovered yet. We're 2 months, 3 months into the off season. It's one of these things that I've caught my breath, but I don't know if I'm ready to get back. And I'm hoping this vaccine really takes care of things and brings back some normalcy for the fatiguing mental side, let alone the competition. You can tell from some of the superstars in the game that it was a struggle for them.
You've been now the Rays hitting coach for a few years, and were with Toronto before that. has coaching always been sort of a passion for you, something you knew you wanted to do at the major league level?
I couldn't say it was the furthest thing from now. I mean, all through my career, I don't want to say it was a struggle. I played for 16 years. It was a grind for sure, up and down the big leagues. And the one thing I said when I finished playing, I'm going to get away from this game. Like, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm looking forward to stepping away. Then reality set in the first off season, and I said, okay, now what am I going to do? And I was fortunate enough to one of the guys in the Blue Jays organization came to me that offseason and said, are you done playing? I said, for sure. My body can't do it anymore. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a month, but I'm going to offer you a coaching position. And I kind of said, no chance. There's no way I'm going to get back in this game. And he said, I'll tell you what, think about it for a month. And it's going to be kind of a no title. I just want to keep you around some of the older guys or younger guys that are in the big leagues, older as far as minor league guys. And I basically took that approach and thought about it for a month. And I said, well, I know this game. Let me try it out. And I ended up falling in love with it. Just my struggles, I was able to relate to them, kind of being a 5th pick overall. So being the super prospect to kind of the 6-year free agent bouncing around for 9 years. So I think I had a good, I could relate to all the different guys on the roster. And I know how hard this game is, and I'll never forget it. So I think that's part that I don't want to say I enjoy their struggles, but I can empathize with them pretty good and relate to them and understand that, no one's trying to fail. Like we're all trying to get this. So I don't take it personal like some of my coaches did. Like I was letting them down.
How did you develop your philosophy then as you got into coaching? Did you have your own philosophies going into it? Did you kind of pick some brains of some people that influenced you? Just tell me through kind of how that philosophy developed here. As you've got a lot of recognition now recently. Travis d'Arnaud during the playoffs told the National that you're a big reason why he's had the success that he's had, for example, and other players have talked about that.
I think the unfortunate part of being a journeyman and being in 9 organizations, you kind of hear all different opinions and different ways to do things. And believe it or not, I saw some of how not to treat people. I learned the most from some of the people that were the worst organizations, unfortunately. I'm not going to name names or call out organizations, but it's one of those things that I didn't realize my last 3 years, being 33, 34, 35 in AAA and kind of being through it all. I kind of mentored some of those young guys. So I guess I was kind of grooming myself to be a coach without even realizing. So I didn't know I had a philosophy. Luckily, my first year I was in the GCL, which is short season, kind of bounced around a little bit, but I made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes, to be honest with you, throughout the day, but I acknowledge it. But I made a ton back then, but these kids were all out of high school or Latin America or some older college guys, and they're so eager, they don't even realize that you said something different. So over time, I've had different ways of looking at the way I approach people, but it's just one of those things. I'm just myself and I want other people to be themselves. It's no secret sauce or something I have other than I expose myself and want you to kind of get a little bit naked with me too, to let's fix these things. I'm on your side.
Is there something as a hitting coach that you want to see more in the game offensively? Something that this game is missing offensively that you want to see more of, and maybe you try to preach to your guys?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to see more contact. Obviously, beating the shift a little more often. These are great in theory, but I also have to understand they're all throwing 100 miles per hour at the neck, and there's certain things that no one had to deal with before. So we're trying to do things to combat this. Everybody's I treat everybody in their own right. They all have their own way of beating the pitcher, but I'd love to tell you that I have this secret thing, this 2-strike approach that's I'm keeping under my hat or using the whole field a little more often. I acknowledge these are things that we get better at, but it's not like it's that easy if I just come up with a philosophy that guys are going to start striking out less. I mean, we're all trying not to swing at a slider in the dirt. We're all trying to lay off that 4-seamer up. The easy thing for the commentators and the public is to say, well, why don't you just choke up and use the whole field? That's our goal, believe me, but it's just not that easy.
The thing that impresses me about obviously what you're doing, and Bryan knows this, he's a diehard baseball, so he knows the ins and outs of the game. And, for example, with your organization, there's a lot of constant turnover where guys get called up, guys get sent down, guys move on to other teams. You bring in new guys through free agency. That's life in Major League Baseball. And yet you got to get you use everybody. You obviously analytics has been well talked about, but you go matchups. Just how do you have more information, more data, but you have more guys that are roles. I mean, Brett Phillips is a great example. We talked about that in Game 4. People are like, "Oh my goodness, But obviously, you guys he came in, he was prepared. So take me through that approach, because you literally every guy in your roster has to be ready, because their number literally could get called at any moment based on what the data says, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy job for Cashier or myself when a guy gets 3 hits and a couple home runs and then he's not in the lineup the next day. So you want the guys to be mad. You want them to understand that we're putting them in positions to succeed. You never want them to accept their role players. So it's one of those things is like, we want you to want to play and think we're not doing you justice and things like that. But our track record really helps. We're winning, which helps them understand. Our expression is, usually say you're starting today, and they always just say, no, I'm not starting, but I'm playing. So they all know at some point they're going to enter the game. They all know that they're going to pick each other up. The buy-in is great. The turnover for me sometimes year to year personally hurts. When I develop a relationship with a guy, we get to the point where, okay, can't wait till next year where we get to pick up where we left off. And then all of a sudden they're gone. And then we turn over but our front office does an amazing job of finding these guys and putting them in roles to succeed. That I don't want to say I'm numb to it, because I love each guy that enters the door, but everybody's kind of accepted that's what's going to happen. So we treat everybody amazing when they're in the room, and when they kind of graduate and move on, it's like, go get all your money and we'll always be in touch, and anything you need, we'll be here. So there's an understanding, losing Charlie Morton, losing Blake Snell this offseason, there's no doubt that's crushing. But we also know we've done it every year, and somehow we find a way. And the Brett Phillips is a great example. Brosseau is a great example. I mean, even Avi Garcia last year, who kind of came off a bad hip and then resurrected his career. It's when people come in the door here, it's like, okay, we know we have your interest at heart, and we're going to do everything to get you in the best positions as possible. Now, is it easy? No, by no means is it easy. And I tell guys, I want you to be mad when you're not playing. It's okay. Go ahead and yell at me, take it out on me. But when your number's called, you better be prepared, because you're only going to suffer if you sit here and pout.
Even I think the poster boy for that would even be Randy Rosarena, who had the most ridiculous postseason ever, really. I mean, just a quick synopsis of that. Like, what was it like to watch that as his coach, but also just as a fan?
I would say it was more of a fan, believe it or not. It was one of those things. He had COVID. We missed him in spring training. It was like 6 weeks away from the world. Speaks a little bit of English because from Cuba. So there's so many obstacles he overcame. Enters, and all of a sudden it's just unconscious. Guys, another thing where you just sit back and pinch yourself. Like, did he just hit another home run on the guy that we're not even touching? And he's hit him using all fields, hitting fastballs, breaking balls. It didn't matter. I don't know if I've seen a stretch like that at any level at any part of the year, let alone during the postseason in the last month. He's really set himself up for a lot of expectations going into the next season, for sure.
Well, you've played 16 years in pro ball. For those who don't know, and most of them in the minor leagues, for those who don't know, can you describe what it's like, the rigors of playing minor league baseball for that many years?
I mean, I can't sit here and say and complain and with all my friends that are still out in the real world, and I haven't had a real world job. But it's more for my wife that had to travel and see all the different cracks of the world, and the kids. They're the ones that have it tough. Sure, you get used to a cold shower, you get used to eating takeout, you get used to it. But I got to play the game that I loved, and I still haven't had a real world job, as they like to say, and all my buddies let me know all the time. So there's plenty of guys that I played with that, along some point in their career, they're like, why are you still doing this grind in the minor leagues? And I just really genuinely didn't know any better, and I loved it. So they didn't really have to rip the uniform off. It was just time. It was too hard for me to prepare my body more than anything. It just wasn't fun anymore. So it was easy to step away. But now moving into coaching, I still get to compete and live through their competitions and prepare them the way I feel like the ideal way to prepare is. So it's it was an easy transition, but the 16 years in the minor leagues, really, you learn to take cold showers, you learn to eat cold food, leftovers, and you just live at the ballpark.
How is Coach Mottola different than Chad Mottola, the player? Like, if I put the two of you in the same room, how would you guys get along? Would be on the same page? Would there be some clashes there? How are you changed from your playing days to now as a coach?
I would say I'm a lot more tolerant. I'm a lot more understanding. I kind of take other people's opinion a lot better now. I think I was a little thick-headed, probably tough to be around at times, but I also appreciate the guy that acts that way. I don't want guys that listen to me and do everything I say. I want guys with a little bit of edge. I want guys that disagree with me. I want guys that have their own opinion, that have their own personality. I think I appreciate them a lot more, maybe because that's the way I was. So there's definitely kind of a graduation into a mature grown-up that I don't know if it was there as a player, but I believe in competition, you have to have that edge. So it's just as we all age, we kind of understand a little bit more, but the best competitors I've been around have been the meanest people to be around, and I'm okay with that. So it's I don't have that edge anymore, but I still want to encourage other people to have that edge.
Well, let's go back to the young Chad Mottola being drafted 5th overall in 1992 by the Cincinnati Reds. What memories stick out to you from that day now, almost 30 years on?
How naive I was. It's definitely a business. Back then, everybody gives me a hard time. Jeter went 6, obviously, Hall of Fame, changed the game in New York. I just feel like that was destiny. We both ended up where we were supposed to end up. There's no hard feelings at all. It's kind of an honor now. After about 25 years, it turned into an honor. For about the first 25, it was miserable hearing that every year. Hey, do you know that you were taken before? Yeah, I'm fully aware. But I think just how innocent I was, how naive I was. Like, this is a business. People lives depend on it, and there's a lot more going into it than just a game. That day I thought I was going to play a game, but soon realized I was getting into a business with a lot of money and people's lives at stake, which is the real world. But I don't think I realized that at the time.
Has that helped you in that throughout your journey, being a high draft pick, going through the minors, like relate to the players? Because you've dealt with every single player you can imagine, players that maybe are top prospects, have high expectations, to the guy that's still maybe lacking that confidence, that's trying to find their game. Because baseball's such a hard sport. It's a game of failure. And people, and so much of it is mental. You can lose your confidence so easily. Through going through what you went through, has that helped you as far as a coach here? Because you probably relate to almost every player on the roster imaginable.
Absolutely. It was miserable to go through all those years of failure, but it's definitely helped me as a coach. The way to approach people, the way to understand the different times, the highs and the lows. I mean, there's nothing harder in my eyes of coaching than being a hitting coach because all the failure. I mean, there's failure right around the corner every night, basically. And I've accepted that. I live the life of that. And I don't mind being the whooping boy at times, because I would rather you be mad at me than mad at yourself. There's plenty of nights that I stayed up trying to figure this game out. I realize now that you're never going to figure this game out. The more you just roll with it and learn to cope with the failures and accept them, the better off you are. Don't try to run from them. So it's definitely being around all the 9 organizations, seeing all the philosophies, seeing all the different players that got there different ways. I've played with a lot of good players, both in AAA and the big leagues, and just observing. And it was miserable to bounce around organization, but it helped me understand the way people work and the way this game is. There's no absolute one way to do it.
But it still must also been an honor because you played in the internationally for so long and you played well. You were inducted in their Hall of Fame last year. That has to be still quite an honor. Yeah,
it's turned into an honor. Like I said, all these years they would rib me and give me a hard time of, it's just Jeter goes to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown and I go to the Hall of Fame in the International League in the same season. It's one of these things that, yes, for sure. You look back now and, man, I played for, I think, 12 years in AAA, which that's unheard of nowadays, just to be able to survive and be that close and just still work and I got my cup of coffee those different years just to, number one, financially survive, but number two, just keep that carrot alive. But I hit a grand slam my second game in AAA and had a 2-run single. It was like 2 for 4 with 6 RBIs. And I was like, man, I'm in the big leagues next week. There's no doubt. So 12 years later, I was still in AAA after a couple cups of coffee, but I wouldn't trade it at all. Like I said, it was meant to be, and it's given me a great disposition where I'm at now for sure.
We're speaking with Chad Mottola here on the Black and Gold Banneret. Tell us about how you ended up at UCF. You played from 90 to 92, obviously got drafted. That's how it set you up. But how did you end up at UCF? Because that's a unique story in itself. Because I believe, as I understand it, you picked UCF over, say, a place like New Orleans and things like other schools like that, right?
Yeah, I was down in South Florida, went to school at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. A couple what they call showcases now. There was just like one all-star game. I was approached by assistant coach at UCF. I'd actually never heard of the school. It came down to, I got a couple limited offers from Florida, Florida State, Miami, just very partial scholarships, but it was FIU, UNO, UCF that all offered full scholarships. And at baseball, that's hard to do with a limited number of scholarships, obviously. So it narrowed it down to those three. My father and I drove up to UCF campus because at that time they didn't even have visits. UCF didn't. So we just took a ride up 3 hours north and fell in love with it. It was kind of just far enough away from home. It was a very peaceful campus at the time, a lot quieter. And it made, obviously looking back, it was one of my best decisions in life. At the time, I was a 10th round pick out of high school. And then end up, like I said, going in the first round. So I just grew so much at UCF, both as a person, both as a athlete, and just have nothing but pride every time everybody has UCF around the country. It like going, when we have fans, there's always a shout out in each city, how spread out the alumni and how much more it's happening nowadays. When 5 years ago, when I first was coaching the Blue Jays, no one really acknowledged it. Now every city, I kind of get a go Knights, charge on, things like that from the stands, and it's pretty cool.
Well, you were always a high average player, and then your power developed in your sophomore and junior seasons. And that junior season, obviously, was very special, being an All-American. Can you describe that season, what that was like going in there as your junior year and having the type of year that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I was a young college or young high school senior. I was 17, so I got to school at 17. I was not really mature, both physically, mentally. And my freshman year, I hit no home runs. I heard about it a lot. And then I kind of went to Cape Cod that was the following year. I'm getting them all mixed up. But I just basically physically grew. And I was so young that it just was a natural progression. I have a 15-year-old son right now who's about 6'1", 135, looks about like I did. So it just with age, I kind of put 10 to 15 pounds of weight / muscle each year from my freshman to junior year at UCF. So that with that, the power came. But I was so young at the time that there was nothing there but the freshman year, but it slapped singles the other way.
Take me through that junior season, because that's really what got you noticed for the draft. And you know, you had a monster season. You hit 345, 14 home runs. You had 7 triples. Obviously, to the point where you had to go or declare, right? Because you knew that you were a high draft prospect. Take me through that process, because at that time UCF baseball was still very young, especially in the Division I standpoint. I think they had just made the NCAA tournament for the first time in Division I in '89. You come aboard, you put that, had that monster career capped off by that great year, and you're probably all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, like the scouts are interested in me. What was that like?
It was a crazy whirlwind. When it all started, because I wasn't even on the map. There, obviously they've done all these crazy things in the last 30 years that weren't around back then with the perfect game and all the rankings and everything. But I really wasn't on the map even I was obviously had a chance to get drafted, but definitely not in the first round. And then we played the Royals in a spring training game, and we used wood bats. And I remember George Brett was there, McFarland, and they all played about 3 innings. But we faced their 40-man pitching, and I got 3 hits, stole a base, and threw a guy out all in this game. And that's kind of when all these guys started coming up to me after games, didn't realize, hey, you have a chance to go high. And then by the midseason, it was, okay, you're going in the first round. And I, believe it or not, didn't even have an agent, which is unheard of now. But I went through the whole draft process without an agent. My dad went through everything. We negotiated literally all on our own. So like I said, we were pretty naive at the time that everybody had your best interest at hand. And looking back, I probably could have used an agent, but it all happened so fast and kind of out of nowhere going into that year that at no point did we think the UCF guy was going to go 5th overall in the country. And it all came, like I said, it came together perfect.
So does that then, because you knew that going into that season, then did you feel any pressure, any nerves, or was it just like, did you just kind of feel like, well, that's not going to possibly happen? You just
That's the way I viewed it. I remember at the beginning of the year, there's probably 5 scouts in the stands. By the end of the year, there's 40 scouts in the stands. My buddy Ty Lynch, that we're still in touch with, always says I got him drafted because he ended up playing one season that year as well, because he got to be seen by the scouts. But I was so innocent and naive that I never felt any pressure because I didn't think it was a reality. I just played the game hard, and next thing you know, like I said, there's like 50 scouts in the stand, but it was just like, well, I'm worried about the guy on the mound, or I'm worried about, the things I can control. At no point was there all this publication that's out there now and all these Twitter world and all these things that everything's broadcasted. So the pressures are completely different now than back then.
Describe playing for Coach Bergman. And what was it like? And what was it like back then? Because there was no on-campus baseball stadium. What was it like?
Well, we actually had the on-campus baseball stadium on the other side.
Oh, okay.
It was, I think where the pool is at now. But my 3 years, we had it. And then would have been my senior year was the first year they went back to Tinker. It was a graveyard. The gaps were huge. It was a big triples park. But Bergie liked to have fun. He kept it loose. He was always, very supportive. But the main thing I took away is he lets you enjoy yourself. It wasn't like a huge fundamental guys, but when it came to play the game, he locked it in. But when we were practicing, we were allowed to have fun and enjoy ourselves.
What is your interaction, if any, with the program these past 15 or 20 years? Do you try to, stay in touch, go back? I've been following Greg Lovelady's teams.
Lovelady and I keep in touch. He's had a couple guys come through the trop. So I'll see him when he has those guys come through the trop that he had at Miami or other places. There's a couple pictures. So we went to lunch the other day. Unfortunately, my time is so limited when I'm at home, the couple months that I want to get back to the family and kind of be normal, if that makes sense. I feel like my kids get robbed of me all the time. So I don't give back nearly as much as I want to or plan to. I went out and talked to the team last year, told them a couple of our philosophies. It was really enjoyable. And then to see them take off the way they took off, what was it, swept Auburn at Auburn? Is that what it was? Or
that's right. Swept them at Auburn. Yep.
Yeah. It's really a shame that season got shortened. And now I guess they got a good problem because now everybody's back, plus some other guys, which I talked to Lovelady briefly about, of how to keep guys happy and ways of rotating the lineups, just the realities of the job as well that he's going to have to deal with, which is a good problem. I always say when you have too many guys, it is stressful making out the lineup, keeping everybody up to speed and things like that.
What is your thoughts on the facility since you've been back, and just the program overall under Coach Lovelady now, and just seeing everything, how it's grown from the days where you were there?
Yeah, from the shack that we had as a cage, along with the bubble that was a weight room that had like 2 benches in it that we shared with the football team. These guys are pretty spoiled, but I'll tell you what, they earned it. They're doing an amazing job. Every time I drive through campus alone, I get lost and can't believe it just went from the Wild Pizza as the only place to eat on campus to all these things that they have now. it's like I said, it's just with tremendous pride every time I come back and go through the campus and see both the baseball, football, basketball, all the sports, and it makes it easier to brag to all these people. I wear my UCF national championship just to give everybody the ribbing and let them kind of have some fun with it. It's really special, like I said, and the pride that I have, and go throughout the country and talk to people about it all the time.
Well, that's awesome, and we wanted to thank you for joining us. My last question for you is: you mentioned it briefly at the start, but in your heart of hearts, do you think this season starts on time in Major League Baseball? Because I think it's one thing everybody's wondering about right now. The players, the owners, we don't know. What do you, in your private moments, do you think that, because we're about a month out from spring training, pitchers and catchers, but do you think we're going to start on time?
I think a lot has to come together, that's for sure. I mean, it's one of these things that I've learned finally with this whole COVID protocol and life, the stress that I had in spring training, both 1.0 and 2.0, that I can't do it to myself anymore. I can't try to guess. I can't try to figure this thing out. Obviously, this virus, it has its own different mind in different ways it's been going about it. So I'm just going to roll with it. I think, unfortunately, MLB is taking that same attitude. That's what it feels like. But there's the energy that it took to get that season in last year. I don't know if people are ready to deal with it again. And I think that's why we haven't heard the announcements yet. We're all under the assumption we're going to be on time, but I just know a lot has to come together in a month to make that happen.
Well, that other people can figure that out. Bryan is a diehard baseball. He lives day and night. So, he's itching. He's itching, Chad. That's why he had to ask that question. I
will say I'm a diehard Yankees fan. My middle name is Munson, so I'm very much a Yankees fan. But to see the way that series ended with Brasso and the home run off of Chapman, very poetic. As a writer, I really enjoyed that poetic cap to that really, because of what happened the month before with them. It was really kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many people in the game of baseball that reached out to me and Mikey Brasso, just the way that all came together. They have to make a movie about it. The way he handled it, the way the Yankees handled it wasn't the best. I think they acknowledged that. It was one of those things that, like in life, you don't get revenge like that. It doesn't work out that way. The storybook, just reality isn't supposed to play out that way. And I think enough Yankees fans acknowledged it. It's one of these things that I'll take with me the rest of my life. I guess in instructional ball, they played the video of the 10-pitch at bat over and over for a week, and you just don't. It doesn't get old. The feeling that of literally wanting to cry about it now. It's the range of emotions of the Brasso crying homer to the Phillips, like what just happened. Like I don't know if I'll ever experience that again in life.
Well, there's a lot of great memories that certainly baseball fans enjoyed and UCF fans enjoyed as they were rooting you on from afar. And really, we're excited for you and the success you've had. Chad Mottola here on Black and Gold Banneret. Thank you so much for taking the time from the busy schedule. I know it's it's your time off. You're trying to get ready for the season, whatever that brings. But on behalf of UCF fans and alums, we really congrats on the success you've had to this point. We wish you well more success, and hopefully once things get back to normal and in a better place, we'll see you at the ballpark more consistently up close.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And it's really an honor to be a UCF alumni, and I brag about it all the time. So great catching up, guys.
That was Chad Mottola joining us there. Thanks again to him for joining us. What a career he had. I want to give a quick stats here before Murph kind of shares his thoughts. Mottola hit .331 in 177 games at UCF, scored 145 runs, 222 hits, 39 doubles, 20 triples. He's still among the tied for the tops in program history. Was an All-American in his final year in '92, which we talked about in the interview. Hit .345, Murph, and that's what kind of one of the things that jumped out at me. And you asked him about it. That final year, having that monster year, and all of a sudden those draft, the scouts take notice, and that led him to being the first-round draft pick. He talked about obviously the joke, being drafted before Jeter, but. That was an important year for him and really setting the records for UCF.
And what I think was fascinating most for me in the interview is just his honesty about how he approached that season, and then how he approached draft day, and then coming out of draft day, and how he didn't understand really any of it, how he was at the center of a lot of hype and, said like, I didn't really think it was going to happen. I didn't really think it was real. I didn't take it seriously enough. And so then when it did happen and he was drafted 5th overall, he didn't realize, he says in the interview, he was naive. He didn't really realize what he was getting into in terms of now it's no longer just me playing a game. I'm a professional. This is really a business now. And I really just I think that's it was a really, really amazing answer from him to really sort of, just go back and reflect about how much he didn't know at that time. And I think that's something that people can understand when you talk about players who, this guy was a bust, he wasn't very good, whatever. Like sometimes you have to remember that when these guys are drafted, and this is college baseball, he's probably 21 when he's drafted, they're still kids. Like and so it's hard for them to sort of click into that mode of all of a sudden I'm a professional when the game has been pretty easy for you at this for a long period of time. And for Chad it kind of was because he was a high average hitter all throughout his career at UCF, that you don't really realize that you have to do anything different, and you just sort of take the game as it goes, and before it's and then it's kind of too late, and you don't realize how this is different. This is pro ball, and this is I love that. I really thought it was kind of interesting to hear him talk about his naivete, and then really how he sort of turned that into his part of his advice for coaching and how he coaches younger players.
Yeah,
a successful career in coaching because of it. It's just remarkable.
And again, it's a successful career in the minor leagues. Again, a AAA Hall of Famer. I mean, you don't play 16 years in the minor leagues for nothing. I mean, you have to understand, like, he played in AAA for a long time. You have to be decent. You have to be good, like, to do that. No one, like, not anyone just gets a spot on a AAA roster. So I know people don't look at that and laud it because people don't really care about AAA baseball. And that's fine, but you have to be good for a long time to play that long in the minor leagues. And now he's a hitting coach of an American League champion.
And it's so unusual to see a guy succeed at that level for so long, because so many teams would just, would how many guys do you see they just give up on guys? Or like, you know what, you're just not a major league player. We're not gonna spend any more time developing you. But he was able to stick around and be serviceable. I mean, I saw him in Syracuse in 2006 when he was, I think, really at the peak of his career, and and you could tell. I mean, that this is a guy. I remember seeing him at that point, being like, "Why is this guy not in the majors?" And sometimes it's a numbers game, right, Murph? And I'm sure he's had every manner of scenario that he had to deal with. That maybe kept him from getting more major league appearances, but I think that also gave him a true appreciation of how rare that really is. As good as he was at UCF, it's just so hard for any player to crack that barrier.
Yeah, and a lot of it is mental. He talked a lot about that. So, and how you handle yourself, and are you ready for this next level, and do you know about everything are you aware of everything that comes with it? And Chad kind of admits that he didn't know everything and wasn't really thinking about it. He just wanted to play ball. He's a ball player. He's playing ball, but it is different. And so I love that. And we you heard him talk. I asked him during the interview about, does he think the season will start, and he said didn't know. But right now we're still on track, guys. And baseball seems to be like every other league, forcing its way to spring training. So.
I'm just proud of you, Murph, how you brought up the Game 5. You admitted you were a Yankee fan. You admitted you mentioned your middle name, and yet you it was a cool story that he shared, and you actually enjoy the story with how he broke down being part of that Game 5 against the Yankees.
Yeah, I don't know if I think I might have mentioned my middle name off the after the interview when we were done recording, but yeah, I did, and I told him. I don't know if I told him on the record, but I did tell him, like, yeah, I'm a Yankees fan, but the way that series ended with Mike Brousseau hitting the home run off of Chapman, who had thrown at Brousseau's head about a month ago, to win the series, knock out the Yankees, like, as a writer, you can't help but say, like, that is a fantastic story. It's an amazing story. So if there's any way that I could stomach the Yankees losing, it's on just a sports writer's dream.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around for that part of that.
Part of it was a part of a great run. Part of a great run for him and helping guys like Mike helping guys, being prepared, whoever's the hitter. And he mentioned that no matter who's on the roster, they got to be prepared to play. And that's what makes his job so tremendous is he usually literally uses the entire roster and has to get them ready. So I think he's done a phenomenal job with the Rays when you consider how they do things over there. It's not like they're buying out, buying George Springers of the world like other teams like to do. So, he's
who
amazing.
would that be?
Other teams in the division. Real quick, Chad Mottola to me, Mount Rushmore of UCF baseball. Right? Would you agree with that? I mean, I think to me,
oh yeah, he's on it, no doubt.
Incredible playing career. What he's achieving right now in Major League Baseball is another aspect, a chapter layer to it. But it was cool to hear him talking to the UCF baseball team and Greg Lovelady. And I thought that was fat. And it's really a credit to Greg, Murph, because Ben Lively have said we've had all these UCF guys, former UCF guys, keep talking about how they're involved now and talking and staying in touch with the program. And I think that's something that Greg has brought since he first arrived here.
Yeah, and Chad talked about how he's had conversation with Greg and about the program and everything, and it's great to see that Lovelady has really tried to bring in as much of the old guard of the program as possible to show the success that this team has had. Eric, I believe Chad Mottola is your third highest ranking men's baseball player on your top 100 men's athletes of all time in UCF history. I think he's at 13 overall, 14 overall.
14th overall, matching the amount of home runs he hit at UCF. See, Matt Murph, middle numbers game. You like that? I knew you loved that. Yeah, I got him right behind Pope and Arnold because Pope and Arnold was just tremendous from a pitching standpoint. But, yeah, I think he's the best offensive player. And the only reason why he doesn't have a ton of records at UCF because he only played 3 seasons.
Right.
Imagine if he plays a 4th season like a lot of guys did. But, I mean, the high draft pick, 5th overall, who knows when we'll get that at UCF baseball. That's not something that just happens, especially in baseball, which is really the differences between 1 and like 150th pick is not that big. So tremendous. And hopefully he gets that World Series ring some point, man. He's earned it. It was kind of a bummer. It's 2 games away, but it's kind of cool to see him here in the state of Florida trying to help the Rays get back to the World Series. So that was awesome. He's a great guy, low key, on and off the air. We were talking, cool guy. And hopefully down the road we'll be covering Rays games again and seeing them up close.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much to Chad. Thanks to the folks at the Rays for helping us out.
The Rays.
They have been so good to us over the years too. The folks at the communications department for the Tampa Bay Rays and we wanted to give big ups to them as well. So, all right, let's take a quick break. When we return, another interview. We're going to talk a little tennis, and we're going to preview men's basketball taking on SMU this week. Finally, can UCF men's basketball get back on track? We'll talk about that more when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't go away. All right, we're back. It's Jeff, Eric, and Brian, and we still got more to talk about. This is a big show. We got a lot going on here. So let's flip back over to as we get ready for our spring sports. By the way, preview coming up for all of our spring sports. Todd Dagenet, we just sat down with him, UCF's head volleyball coach, and we did a preview interview with him this week. We're going to have that up a little bit later this week because we're going to do our own all volleyball show. So we're going to do that. I'm hoping we can do the same with soccer as well. So we'll see how that goes with everything, and also baseball and softball, of course.
Oh, a little baseball theme show, Murph.
Yes.
That's why Murph's not joining us for volleyball because he's just prepping for that baseball.
He's locking himself up for he's locking himself in for baseball. But in addition to all that, listen, if you ask me, who might be the hottest prospected team really to make some noise in the NCAA tournament, especially in a weird year like this? Take a look at your UCF tennis teams, folks, because those teams could have had a shot to really get somewhere last year when the season ended, and they're just getting better. And we're going to start with the women's team first, and their head coach, Bryan Koniecko. And Eric, you talked to Bryan. He's got some high expectations this year, doesn't he?
Well, he has everybody has high expectations, not just him. Women's team ranked 18th in the preseason poll, the highest ever for the program in the preseason rankings. And why not? After all, this is a program that's been on the rise. They were ranked, of course, made it to the Sweet 16 in 2019, and perhaps was on making the run in 2020. They had knocked off Baylor. They got ranked 12th at one point. Seemed to have another year before, obviously, the season came to an abrupt end. But now it's a new year, and with that comes high expectations, a program that he has taken to the highest level. I asked him about that, about the expectations, and what's it like to be back in this current climate after being off for so long. Here now, Bryan Koniecko on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast.
Well, Coach, another season here is about to start. What has this been like for you and your program here since, obviously, last March? We all know what happened with the season being cut short abruptly. In fact, I'll never forget, you were coming off that your last match was a win over top 25 ranked Baylor, and you were on your way to having another monster year following up 2019. What has it been like for you from that point on to now here on the verge of starting the spring season?
It's been a lot. It's been a lot of emotions for the players, mostly. It's been tough, to say the least. Like you said, we played one of our best matches of the season against Baylor to beat them at a tough place, and then to hear the news. Obviously was a tough, 3-4 weeks for them after that, just to kind of figure out what's going to go on in life. But I'm really pleased and happy with how everyone has responded. We've had a majority of our team back on campus and training and kind of looking forward to a new opportunity of a year. I know a lot of them didn't start the year, even though we were finishing pretty well, didn't start exactly how they wanted to. And I know they want to make the ship right and keep UCF, keep getting better. So we're excited and just trying to get ready.
How big is it to have pretty much the core back from the team that's been successful, that's tasted the conference championships and the run to the Sweet 16 a couple years ago, and then the run you were having in 2020? How big is it to have that nucleus back as opposed to maybe having a young team and having to deal with the unique circumstances?
Yeah, I've never been more excited to have a second shot with the same group of girls. They're great players, and they want to be great. And last year, it was a huge learning experience for them. A lot of them, even though first time in college tennis and experiencing pressure and big matches, and to be honest, and they'll tell you too, they probably didn't perform at their maximum capacity in some of the matches. And I'm just really excited to have this group back and get a second shot at it. I know they want it, and I've already seen it. I've seen it in practice. I see it in the look in their face of how they're ready to kind of learn from last year and do better and, understand how hard it is to win some of these matches and how hard it is to get to 4 points in college tennis against good teams. So, I think they're ready.
You come in preseason ranked 18th in the country, 4 singles players ranked, 2 doubles teams of yours ranked. And I know I've talked to Coach Roddick about it. He doesn't like to focus on rankings, especially early on, because it's about what you do during the season and the rankings take care of itself. But that being said, from the outside of us, for us, this was like a big deal, because especially with the program and the success you've had in recent years. Internally, how much of that do you even discuss with your players? How do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, hopefully the coaches just stay out of the way and don't mess it up. No, I'm kidding. We've been in this position a little bit. We were in this position last year too. And again, we just because we're on paper, we still have to show up and we still have to, dot our I's and cross our T's to win these matches. It's just everybody is good. I don't care if you're ranked 6th in the country or 36. You can lose on any given day, and we've learned that. We've learned that over this last couple seasons, and it's great to get that accomplishment because they work so hard, and I'm proud that we had a couple All-Americans last year for the first time in program history, and because they deserve it, and it's nice to see the work. Have a number next to it. But at the same time, we have to act like the underdog at all times because if you're not ready, you can lose to anybody. That's how fine the line is in college tennis.
One of the players that you got back is your senior, Rebecca Stomar. How big was it to have her back? She's ranked 42nd in singles, and I'm obviously 6th in the doubles with Marie there. What does it mean to have her back?
You know, Rebecca, we love Rebecca. I mean, she was my first recruit at UCF, so it's obviously that always holds a special place with you. Somebody who came in and trusted the program when it was kind of at its lowest, and to come in and, Rebecca had some injuries last season in December and January, and was working hard to come back. And kind of right when she was ready to be back, we got shut down with season. And so for her to come back and decide to opt in to play one more year and end it right, I'm really excited for her. She deserves it. She's been a true leader. She's evolved as a leader even from last year, and she's been doing the right things, and she's playing well. And I think we'll see some really good things on the court from her this year.
Describe your roster for those who are not familiar. As I mentioned, you got 4 singles players ranked, 2 doubles teams ranked. And what's unique about college tennis, for those that don't follow it, obviously it's a team event because you get points for singles wins and doubles. But you've got a lot of depth and a lot of options. Just take us through the roster here and what people can expect here in 2021.
I mean, that's the nice thing about having depth on a team. We have a lot of options. It's not like we have a standout, this player is at this position or this player is that. Each player is going to have to earn their stripes every week in practice and get the opportunity to play. And, it's nice for us because it allows us some availability to mix up matchups against other teams, and to put people in different positions because we're all in a very close level of the team. So, but and in a way it's really hard because, we have, probably 9-10 really, really great players who all deserve to play. But it's just such a competitive team. And, for a tennis, which is such a individual sport, to teach the team that the goal is to have, 4 points next to UCF's name. That's the only thing that matters. That's a really difficult message to keep sending across, and, but I think they understand. They want to win for each other. They want to win for UCF. And, at some point someone's not going to play. They're going to get other opportunities, but, the goal is to get UCF to 4 and it's a team sport. And, I think they've understand that, and I'm excited to see them, get it to work.
You have a veteran group, but you also have some new faces on the roster. How do you blend that in? I know you're not the only one dealing with that, but every team in the country probably has a little more depth than they usually do because of the extra year eligibility. Maybe certain players come back, and then you have the class you're bringing in. How do you mix that chemistry in, and especially with some of the new faces?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have – early on in my career, we were always bringing in new players and trying to set a culture, for this team. So you're always really trying to teach these freshmen coming in of the culture of the program and stuff like that. And, now that we've been here for 4 or 5 years, it's unique to see the seniors who have been there with us through this whole time kind of teach the culture for you, and that's when it's kind of, it's getting in the right direction of how you want the program to be, that the players and the seniors and the leaders on the team can focus on how to lead the girls and the coaches can just coach. And that really, takes a weight off of the coaches, and it kind of, the freshmen come in and they already know what's up. They know how to practice, when to be, how to be on time, how to take care of their stuff. Not because they hear it from the coaches, but because they hear it from the older core of the team. And that's what I think has helped the most, and it's helped our freshmen adjust quicker, I feel.
How has recruiting changed for you since, in particular, after the 2019 season, winning 24 matches, getting to the Sweet 16, the deepest in program history? Have you noticed a change now with the as far as recruiting, more people wanting to come here, the brand name, obviously the facilities, which we've talked about in the past, among second to none. But how did 2019? How have you noticed the impact that season in particular has made now on future nights coming here?
Yeah, it's definitely helped us get a foot in the door. I definitely will say that. It's easier to validate what you're selling with a number put on your product. So that obviously helps. The facility that we have, that it's beautiful here. That's always helped from day one. That's the reason why we've had such great players come here, and also the opportunity that they can have to play tennis at a really high level and even professionally. That's been really hard. But, recruiting doesn't change. I mean, even though it helps you, validate a little bit of what you're doing, always the player wants to know what you can do for them and how you can help their future. So that message is always the same, and it's going to continue to be the same probably until, doesn't matter what ranking we are. But, it does help validate, but we still have to show them how we can help and how their life will be better after UCF. And we truly believe that it will be.
I remember we spoke when you arrived here and the vision you shared with Coach Roddick for the tennis program and turning this program into a national brand and the success. And obviously both of you have had success with your respective programs. But are you even ahead of schedule? Because I remember when, that was when people from the outside were like, man, tennis, that's a tough sport to turn around. But you both have been able to do it with your respective sports. Are you even ahead of schedule where you thought you would be when you first arrived here and shared that vision with Coach Roddick?
Yes, I would say yes. I mean, and I think it was in our second year where we got to 21 in the country. And I think since then, I don't think we've moved out of the top 20 or 25, I believe. So it got there quick, and, it's fun to get there, and it's another thing to keep staying there, and, now our players, have to, put on the pressure of having and earning the pressure to try to keep elevating this program and enhancing it. That's the goal. I don't really think about that stuff. I mean, I just think about the new year and what can we do to keep enhancing what we have. And hopefully it happens. But like I said, I mean, there's so many great schools and great programs with good weather that it's hard. The line is very, very thin in college tennis to be ranked 4 in the country or to be ranked 24. I mean, it literally comes down to a few points here and there. And, the tougher teams and the more prepared teams are the ones that can get that success. And that's what we try to preach.
And yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, obviously the men's team's ranked, the women's team's ranked. Do y'all I know you take pride in that. Is there between the two of you, do you use that as motivation, and if you will, that both of you push each other from a program standpoint to the next level and maintaining that high level? Because I would imagine from a player standpoint, they notice what the men's doing. They notice what you're doing. I wonder if there's any chatter about that, not necessarily on the negative side, but more of a positive, hey, look what they're doing. Let's both kind of reach that level together.
I for sure think that there is a little bit of that, underneath everybody. I know that when we're on the road, even last year, I think the boys were at Texas Tech and we were at Panera or something. And, we had 4 of the girls had their phones out with 4 courts going because they were in all third sets and we were screaming and yelling at Panera for them to win, So I think it's nice that we kind of had that timing where we came in together and both programs kind of, spurred up like that. I think it brought a lot of cohesion between the two teams. I mean, they're very close to hang out with each other all the time. So, I do think that they're pushing each other, but I think more so we're all supportive and what can we do to help each program get to where they need to be.
Tell me a little bit about your schedule, how it came about making the schedule, especially in these unique times. What was it like? Was it any different than past years? And it's another challenging schedule. You've challenged your team once again with a tough schedule there. You got Florida coming in, obviously. You're home and home with them. You've got Miami. You're going to Texas, scheduled to go there. And obviously we got the league, which we'll talk about. You go to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Just tell me about the schedule.
Yeah, the schedule, first of all, is the hardest year that we've had to deal with scheduling. I mean, the amount of, and we're going to continue to have the amount of matches that we have to move and protocols. And, I mean, this is as hard as I've ever had to work on scheduling. But, again, I believe that our players deserve the opportunity to have as many quality opponents as possible. They work hard, they train hard to have opportunities, and that's what, as coaches, we have to provide opportunities for our players to be successful. And I try to schedule as many top 25, top 30 teams in the country as I can. Obviously it helps our ranking, but it obviously, more so than that, they deserve it. They deserve that shot. And we're going to continue to do it. And obviously we have a tough, American Conference, Tulsa and South Florida, and SMU has a new coach. So there's going to be a lot of challenges in our conference as well.
Yeah, and you don't waste time either. Like, you're playing you got Wake Forest and Raleigh. And I've noticed that from your scheduling, you'll play anybody anywhere, won't you? Like, that's one of those things I've noticed. You guys are not going to duck anybody. You're willing to play the best teams and wherever, and it shows every year in your schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no better way to toughen up, especially some of our younger girls, freshmen who are coming into college tennis, and to take them to Michigan in the cold and to play them in front of a couple hundred fans that are screaming and yelling against them. I want to see that. I want to see how they react. I want to see how they learn from that. We have to put them in these environments, because when we get to the NCAA and, we get to these high-level places, there's a lot of fans, there's a lot of pressure, and they have to learn to deal with it. So, yeah, we're going to, sometimes it might not be the easiest place to come out of and win, but sometimes it's more valuable to put them in a really tough situation and see how they can get themselves out of it.
Obviously, as tennis fans, we've seen how the pros have handled the current climate, obviously with the majors and the protocols that they've had. I'm curious, from a college tennis standpoint, how much have you've paid attention to what the pros have done? What have you paid attention to, obviously, what the fall sports have done? And just take us through that process as you learn. I would imagine, and I remember tennis, I figure it has one of the advantages from the standpoint of the sport not being very, it's already a social distance sport for the most part. So I have to believe that has to give you a confidence going in.
Yep. There's so many things that we had to think about, and we did. We tried to, learn as much as we can from football, from happening. The advantage that we have in tennis is that it is an outdoor sport. It is more social distancing. The big disadvantage is that we have 11 players, and they all pretty much live together, so if you have one COVID case, almost the whole team gets shut down, where, you have a team like football with 100 players, right. You might have, 10 guys out, but 90 guys are still in. And that's where we're a little bit different, because if we're without 25% of our team, then you almost can't play the match. So we have to be smart in how we social distance and how many vans do we travel in. And, because it's just, it's just one player, pops with a positive case, it really affects the whole team. And I feel really bad for our team. I tell them all the time. I mean, this is the hardest year, that I will probably ever have in coaching. And they just happen to be through it, and I feel really bad for them. But I do think that the sacrifice that they have to do to have a successful season will be maybe one of the most rewarding that they can ever look back on from any teams that we had. And even though it's, pretty painful in the moment, I think it'll mean that much more if we can be smart and have a successful season.
No question. And it's just kind of navigating through it, and we've seen it all over in all sports there. Last question for you, and I appreciate you taking the time as you get set for the season. What's going to be the keys from your team, and maybe things you're looking forward to finding now once you get on the court and play other teams? What's going to be some of the things you're looking for and keys for your team to have the internal success and accomplish your internal goals?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to find out of, how, in some of these tough moments, of how badly that we want to try to make it through some of these tough moments. And, like I said, I think we learned a lot from last year, in a lot of instances. And if you probably interviewed some of our players individually, they'll tell you that they could have done better. And I'm just excited for them to put to work of what they've been talking about and what they've been showing us on the court. I mean, we had all 11 girls miss Christmas this year to be here for season, especially internationally. I mean, they came back here to, to be with the team and to practice and to prepare themselves for this year. And you don't see that too often. I mean, the whole team missing Christmas. I mean, that is really hard to ask for as a coach, and they did it. And, so I'm just excited to see them put that sacrifice that they had to do and now, go and make it count.
Well, we're excited that you get the opportunity, Coach, and we're going to be wishing you well and looking forward to seeing your team on the court here soon, starting the season. I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy time, but like I said, congrats on the success you've had to this point. We wish you good luck this season, and we hope to do this again down the road.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your time.
All right, and there was Coach there. I appreciate him for taking some time with us. And thanks to Kenny Landis, our sports information guru there at UCF, for setting it up to help us get ready for this tennis season. We're going to have, by the way, Coach Roddick scheduled next week because the men get started next week. The women start this weekend. And I'm going to write for Black Gold Banneret a big project on the side on the rise of the tennis program, Jeff. And that's something you and I have talked about for years, since the rise of this program, where this program was when Danny White arrived at UCF to where it is now, to where a point where you've got the women's team and the men's team in the top 20 in the country as legitimate contenders for the national title and conference championships. It's been one of the most underreported and fascinating stories, I think, of UCF athletics history.
Yeah, and the fact that it's happened so quickly with both teams, and I've said this before that tennis as a sport, especially for a school like UCF in Florida, good weather all the time. We know how big tennis is, especially in upper South Florida, like in Palm Beach and everything. Tennis was really underinvested in here at UCF for a long, long time. And it's just sort of the confluence of a number of forces that have resulted in this resurgence, like you were talking about, Eric. The opening of the USTA National Campus, UCF deciding to make that their home, their home for tennis competition. John Roddick coming in and being named not just the men's head coach, but the director of tennis at UCF. And how that's opened up recruiting. He hires Bryan Koniecko, and that program just takes off, immediately. And that's not to say that's not to cast any aspersions on the men's team. That team's been pretty good. They've had and they have really stepped up the competition. I feel like over the last couple of years they've really, because of the step up in who they've played. They've had a little bit. I think they've had a little bit more growing pains, but boy, we saw things really come together for them
this year. It's paying off. They're ranked 16th,
and I would not be surprised to see them get even better as time goes by too. Sure. So this is going to be. I think this is going to be a fun year for UCF tennis. I think it's going to be. It's man. I just can't wait to see what they're able to do when they
think about this. And we mentioned it during the interview. 4 singles players ranked, 2 doubles teams ranked, including senior Rebecca Stolmar, who I mentioned, came back, get the extra year, ranks 42nd singles, ranks 6 in doubles alongside Marie Mattel. They're one of the top doubles teams in the NCAA. Could be a national title contender in doubles, women's doubles. So this team is loaded. Zaleva. And you heard Bryan talk about the depth, and that's what it's a good problem to have. And I think they're ready. They're used to now dealing with the expectations. They don't duck anybody. Have you seen the schedule? They're going to open up with Wake Forest.
Tiffany Roberts-Sahaydak should almost be jealous of that schedule.
Yeah, so it is.
Tiff would get that. By the way, Tiff would certainly get that joke because we joke with her all the time about it, or insane schedule she puts together.
Yeah, well, the women's tennis is pretty wild there. They got a wild home and home with Florida this year on the schedule. You got Wake Forest, who's ranked in the top 25. They go to Texas. That's a power program. At Georgia, which you covered. You've covered the Georgia tennis program, women's. At Oklahoma State. At Oklahoma. At FSU. I can keep going. It's just insane. By the way, the American Conference Championships, April 22nd to the 25th in Orlando at the USTA National Campus.
As they should be. What a great place to have a conference tournament. Great place to have a national tournament, as we saw last couple years ago. So that's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's switch gears over to hoops and just check in on everything that's going on this week. Because obviously with the men's team is, boy, are they in a slide right now. After that 3-1 start, they've now lost their last 4, and we were talking about it after the last game against Houston, where UCF Murph on Sunday got boat raced in the first half, and then in the second half actually made it pretty respectable. Ended up losing by 17, but this is a team that just has not had time on the court together due to the pandemic and having to shut things down for a little bit because there were some positive COVID tests. And it's tough. You could see that they just have not been in sync together, have they?
No, and they've not, and so, but if you add not being in sync and not practicing together with the fact that they don't really have a point guard at the moment, it leads to some bad results, and we've seen that this offense is just it's hardly an offense at this point. They really can't get into good sets. It's unfair, really for Dre Fuller, who's taking on a lot of the point lead role, to be in that role because it's not his gig. And that's led to a lot of turnovers. They had 20 in that game against Houston. That's why that game got away. That's one reason why that game got out of hand really quickly on Sunday. We don't know the status of Darius Perry. We hope he's back for this game against SMU. But I think it's kind of shows you the difference between these two teams right now, UCF and SMU. UCF has one of the worst scoring offenses and one of the worst assist to turnover ratios in the nation right now, and certainly near the bottom of the American. But SMU, with point guard Kendrick Davis, who is averaging about 19 points and 7 assists a game, they're leading the league in scoring, and they're first in the league in assist to turnover ratio. It's just they are running a good offense because they've got a guy who knows how to run it. And UCF doesn't really have that guy right now with Darius being out and with Tony Johnson being hurt. It's just the way it is. And so hopefully Darius can come back for this game. And if so, we might actually get to see more of what we've seen from this offense when things were going right. Again, against games like Cincinnati. But we don't know. We'll see. Johnny Dawkins was very coy about it, asked about it after the game against Houston and said there's tests that he has to take and whatnot. I'll just say this. It certainly sounds like he doesn't want to say a whole lot about the type of test that he has to take. So I'm wary to go any further on that. It's just how it is this year. By the way, the American had 3 more games postponed today. And they weren't all supposed to play today, but games postponed for today and dates ahead. I believe the American has now had 12 games postponed in the past 8 days.
Wow. Yeah.
There were 4 games scheduled. For tonight's calendar. Only one of them actually played. That was Houston at Tulsa. So it's look, this is what it is. SMU hasn't played since January 11th. I don't believe. I believe their last
they've
3
had
games.
3 games in a row postponed. Their last game, you're right, was at home against Temple on the 11th. They won that game by 11 points. They were supposed to be at Memphis on the 14th, postponed. Home for Wichita on Sunday the 17th, postponed. They were supposed to play Tulane. We're recording this on Wednesday, January 20th. They're supposed to play in New Orleans against the Green Wave tonight. That got wiped.
And so, the Memphis game, the first one was due to a COVID testing and contact tracing at SMU. The Memphis the Wichita State postponement was due to COVID at Wichita State, and the Tulane postponement was due to COVID at Tulane. It's impacted every team. Cincinnati is in a really bad way right now. They've had games canceled left and right. There's cancellations going on at USF right now because of contact tracing and positive cases with the Bulls program. We know that UCF has certainly had to deal with their issues this year. It is what it is. And right now UCF is trying to struggle and fight through it. I hate to say that because this isn't their fault. They didn't ask for this. They didn't. This is a pandemic, guys. But this is what they've been tasked to do, and we'll see. I think the big thing is, can Darius Perry come back and make this offense look respectable? And at least we know that this week they've gotten some practice time, as far as we know, because between the game against USF back on December 26th. And the game against Houston last Sunday, I believe this team had all of about 3 practices.
Well, USF was January 2nd, but 3 practices since then?
Yeah.
They've had 2 games since then.
Yeah, well, that's because
that tells you.
They haven't been able to practice because of COVID.
Yeah.
So from January 2nd to January 17th, they had basically 3 practices. And even in those practices, they haven't been able to go as a full team. They've been going in small groups. So it's It's disjointed, it's choppy, but this is kind of what you knew the season was going to be like, unfortunately.
Yeah, it stinks because of the promise of that start, right, where everything seemed to be coming together, and then Tony Johnson got hurt, and then Darius got hurt, and it's just going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of what ifs this year, and that's not exclusive to UCF. I get it, but it's just it's a bummer right now because we've seen like how good this team can be, and you're just hoping that they were able to pull it together again at some point so that we can see that again, because that start was fun to see. I mean, this thing looked good.
And they'll be tasked really hard this weekend against an SMU team that scores the ball really well. 4 guys on SMU with double figures, averaging points per game in double figures. They lead the league in points. Really could be maybe the second best team in this conference. Maybe it's Wichita State. Certainly Houston's number 1, and Houston's opened up a wide gap, I think, between them and whoever else.
Destroyed Tulsa on Wednesday night, 86-59 at home. I mean, they took payback for that loss to Tulsa earlier in the year.
It's too bad. There are like 4 teams that could be the second best team in this conference, but the gap between Houston and the rest of the field, I mean, they're lapping the rest of the field almost right now. SMU is in that group, maybe at the head of that group. But right now, if the season ends today, this is a 1-bid league.
Yeah, and it's looking like Houston. And this is with, and by the way, can we also mention just as some additional props to Houston? This is with the preseason player of the year having played, 2 games, and then decided, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to the transfer portal.
And so he's gone to Florida State. Meanwhile, Quentin Grimes, if it's not Kendrick Davis being player of the year, Quentin Grimes for Houston, the former McDonald's All-American, the former Kansas Jayhawk, he is looking like the player of the year. So it's, I mean, I know this is maybe a hard thing to wrap your head around, but if you get really good players, the odds are your team's going to be pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know why Kelvin Sampson would have taken his tie off if he had to. I mean, why
going
would
all
things go
polo
this way?
now, man. Those days are gone, unfortunately.
No more Kelvin tie bets. Oh boy, what are we gonna do? On the women's side, they're coming off 2 straight victories, although they had their game against that was scheduled for tonight, January 20th, at home against SMU. That game was canceled. Their next opportunity is Saturday at Houston at the Fertitta Center, and then they play ECU on Wednesday. By the way, Wednesday I think it's a double dip, UCF and ECU at home on Wednesday, with the women followed by the men. But right now, UCF women's basketball is sitting pretty at 7-2 on the season, and even with the wipeout of SMU on that schedule. UCF is looking in pretty good shape. They took it to Cincinnati at home, beat them by 16 points in what was a real revenge game, Eric Lopez, after last year, and Cincinnati handing UCF a really tough loss in the American semis. UCF was primed and ready for another go at UConn, and Cincinnati all of a sudden popped up and said, never mind. But in this game, boy, did UCF really teach them a lesson, I thought, especially with the defense. Once again, they held them to single figures once again in 2 of the 4 quarters. And Cincinnati, as a team, shot 14 for 49, 28%. This team's defense is just suffocating right now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's top level. And Diamond Battles even mentioned post-game on that they circled this game. They remembered, the veterans remembered that semifinal loss, that bad taste in their mouth, and what turned out to be the final game of the 2020 season for them when they lost to Cincinnati in the semifinals. And they were ready for this game. They held Amari Thomas, who was, averaging 25 a game, the preseason co-player of the year, 4th in the country in scoring, held her to like 13 points, limited her touches. They doubled her. They dominated the boards. They won by 11 rebounds. Didn't give up a second chance point until the end of the 3rd quarter when the game was pretty much decided. So very dominant performance for them. I think Coach Abe was pleased. I think he's learning this team what they can and can do. And they've been dominant at home for the most part. Now they go on the road against Houston, who they played earlier this year at home. They beat them by at home. But Houston's coming off a blowout win over Temple on Wednesday. Temple is the team that knocked off UCF. And me and Murph talked about this on our last episode. UCF has to hold serve Currently, as of Wednesday night, their net ranking is 59. Really, their marquee win right now from a ranking standpoint is Tulane at 50, believe it or not. That like Virginia, who, by the way, just dropped out of playing this season, they're in the 200s. LSU is 90. You mentioned SMU. The reason why the SMU game got canceled is because SMU opted out of the season a few weeks back. So they got to hold serve here and set up a showdown with South Florida, which will be on Super Bowl Sunday. And they got to probably beat South Florida. They're not only going to have to beat South Florida to win the league, but they're probably going to have to beat South Florida to get into the NCAA tournament, because that's going to be the win that maybe gives them a chance to get into the field of 64, if it's 64. It's not 100% guaranteed, by the way, that the women's tournament is going to be 64. It might drop to 48, apparently, depending on how things go. So they gotta hold serve. The Temple lost things from that standpoint. They got to be dominant. And this is a Houston team that's very good, very tricky, with a head coach that you and I know pretty well, Jeff, obviously the former assistant of Joey Williams on the UCF staff. So this is a tricky game for them going on the road against Houston on Saturday.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and I did want to bring that up because you remember UCF beat Virginia in their opener at home by 26 points, nearly doubled them up to 60-34. And you're expecting Virginia's RPI to kind of boost as they would play more of their schedule in the ACC, because the ACC is pretty strong. But Virginia just wiped out their whole season. They said, we're done at this point. And so, like you said, that does hurt UCF in the numerical rankings. So where do you make that up in terms of your conference schedule? So right now, like
this is where all you mathematic geeks let's decide everything by numbers. This is where it's flawed, because UCF did nothing wrong here. You scheduled Virginia and LSU. You can't predict that Virginia's going to go 0-5 and call it a season, and all of a sudden you're being punished for playing a team that's in rankings in the 200s when they're normally in the 80s. So that's the negative with depending everything on numbers, because this team is better than what the rankings show, but based on some of the opponents they're playing, they've been hurt by that. So we'll see.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the USF, the point for the USF game, because right now South Florida is leading the conference at 7-0. UCF right now is the only team with a 1 in the loss column.
Yep.
And they're 1 ahead of Temple, who's having a pretty decent year in conference so far at 4-2. Houston's 5-3, Tulane 5-3. So there's your lineup in the American, at least as of right now. By the way, and the real reason why. And I know I feel like I'm getting ahead, and Coach Abe, if she's listening, she'd be so mad at me right now because I'd be looking ahead from these games. But right now we're looking at the number 4 ranked scoring defense in the country in UCF, 50.6 points per game. And they're the 17th best field goal percentage defense in the country. They're holding opponents to barely under 34% from the field, which, when you think about it, is really remarkable what they've been able to do. I mean, we always talk about what we need in terms of offense, but my God, this team is so good on defense. They're really putting together a masterpiece right now on the defensive end of the floor. So I'm hoping that like you said, Eric, they hold serve to the point where you can see them
hold serve, baby. Think about it. I envision this night shift, post game, following UCF women's basketball. You and me, Jeffrey, breaking down the game. We bring Murph
during the Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? We're not
before the Super Bowl. The women's game's early tip. We got time. Time.
Well, we don't know. It's a TBA. I'm hoping that it's at noon and not.
What do you mean?
3.
What are you talking about? It's like nationally. I believe it's at 2:00.
Is
noon
it at 2:00?
tip, actually.
Did they announce?
Yeah,
that?
I don't know where. Yeah, where'd you get the TBA?
Oh,
from
I was
there?
looking at stats.ncaa.org. That's where I was looking.
They do.
Okay. I tell you what, no one else will get this because it was off air, but this has not been a good night for Jeff and UCF numbers.
Yeah, it really hasn't been, man. It's been bad.
I tell you what.
It's been right. Okay, you're right. Yes,
away from that, except to say it's
noon
ESPN
ESPN2.
baby.
Noon ESPN2.
Night shift. Women's basketball recap. Me and Jeff will bring Murph in to bring in some Super Bowl prop bets for the show.
Hey, you know what?
Murph?
If Gabe Davis and the Bills win this weekend, I'm all about it. By the way, Gabe Davis didn't practice this week,
What?
Didn't practice on Wednesday. So be on the watch out for that. Be on the watch out for that.
In the meantime, UCF and Houston on Saturday, 6 p.m. ESPN Plus on the women's side. So be sure to check that one out as well. So By the way, ESPN Plus games, I've been really interested, Eric, at how each school in the American runs their telecasts, and they're all kind of a little bit different, but they're all more or less local broadcasters who are doing these games.
Yeah, Neil Solantz is the men's analyst for USF, the Tampa Bay Rays pregame host, among others. And so, yeah, man, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see the league there working on ESPN Plus. And I'll have the Houston game on while I have the men's game on the TV on Saturday. In fact, I might just do a night shift after both those games to recap the men and the women.
Just by yourself?
Well, I mean, Murph, if you're welcome to join me after the post game there, I might have a special guest, actually.
Saturday the 23rd, by the way, the men's team at home against SMU. That's ESPNU, that game. The Wednesday game against ECU is on ESPN Plus. That's on January 27th. All right. So that gives us the opportunity to kind of wrap this thing up, guys. What are you working on this week? Brian, I'll start with you.
Well, we'll see how UCF basketball can maybe piece itself together. That would be great. So I've really just been reacting to that game, and then as I sort of, I guess, preemptively or prematurely sort of dropped in there, following Gabe Davis's practice reports, because he didn't practice on Wednesday, and usually.
Yeah, I wish the media. I mean, the media is so obsessed with that other guy's status, the quarterback from the Chiefs. What's his name again? Mahomes?
I don't know. His dad was a baseball player. That's all I know.
Yeah.
So
his dad's name was Pat Mahomes. I remember that.
I don't know what his kid's name is then. Gabe has an ankle injury. I believe he hurt the ankle while stretching out for a pass in the end zone in last weekend's game against Baltimore, and came up a little gimpy, and I think worked through it. But maybe there's giving him some rest, but we'll see how it goes. I would, be great to see Gabe play this Sunday because he's the only guy that we got left.
Yeah. So. Yeah, he's it in terms of UCF alumni in the playoffs. But we got some good championship games this week. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Eric, what are you working on?
Well, I'm working, as I mentioned earlier, on this big tennis feature story that's going to come out next week, obviously on the rise of the tennis program from where it is to a top 25 program.
An ELO feature.
Yeah. We're going to have some big guests on that art feature. Obviously, Coach Koniecko. We had the interview on this episode. We're going to have Coach Roddick next week. And we have a special guest who's going to be probably quoted in that article. I'm not going to give it away right now. You're going to have to wait.
Not an audio interview, right?
No, it's a big-time guest talking about the rise of the tennis program. It's not a tennis player. It's a pretty big feature. UCF fans like him a lot, so I think you'll enjoy. So I'm working on that between now, hopefully to have that out before the men's tennis season opener next weekend. So we'll be working on that, and got some volleyball to get ready for,
yes,
Jeffrey, right?
We just wrapped up our interview just the other day with Todd Dagenet, our season preview interview with Todd. Which has, I love talking with Todd, especially in the preseason, and we had a fun interview with him here. Although we didn't get the chance to talk much about on the wrestling side, did we, Eric?
No, but that may be for the best right now. There's nothing worth talking about in wrestling right now, to be honest. So we did. I could tell you, Murph. We talked about let's not forget, Coach Dagenet is a diehard Packer fan.
Yes.
So you do have that angle. We do have that angle.
We do have that angle,
and but potentially if they beat the Bucks. But
so we're going to be doing our own. So we're going to be doing our own volleyball preview show this week as well. We're going to be meeting with some of the players tomorrow, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Thursday for those
Thursday
when you're listening. Yes, Thursday.
Thursday, yes. So because we're recording this on Wednesday, January 20th, which I always
Murph gets to miss that episode. We've all missed episodes in the last few weeks. Murph, it just so happens your turn is the volleyball episode.
I don't know what to say. I don't know.
You're missing out, is what you have to say. I mean, that's just the fact.
That's why we didn't talk wrestling. We can't talk wrestling with Dagenet without Murph.
Listen. I'm gonna bend to your guys' will this summer. Okay, we're gonna have to have some. Maybe we'll do like something because we can't do WrestleMania because the season's going on. Maybe we'll do something for SummerSlam. We'll get Lovelady in here. We'll get Todd in, Murph. Oh. I don't know. Maybe
let's just hope the product is decent enough to the point where we can actually talk about it, because it's pretty bad right now. Honestly, I don't even want to talk about it.
When was the last time that Eric? You always say that. Like you always complain about.
No, this is pretty bad. Like Murph's disgusted by it.
Maybe it is, but maybe WWE will be better by the summer when Parker Boudreaux is
Hey! Hey! And I know, Murph, you'll be keeping abreast of that.
Oh, Elo's on that beat. That's not my
Oh, yeah.
beat. That's Elo's beat.
That is my beat. I did write about that. You can check that out.
Yeah, you got about 1,500 words queued up for the official announcement if that ever happens, right, Eric?
Down pat, ready to go. Get quotes. Heck, maybe I'll reach out to Todd and Greg and get quotes from them and their how they think he'll fit.
Are we gonna have some potential angles with people? We're gonna have some potential gimmicks.
Oh God!
Hopefully something better than what we're currently seeing in the current product. That's all I hope for his sake.
Here we are already planning his post UCF career. Sorry, Parker. You know, we kid because we care. Anyway, that'll do it for us here on Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Make sure you follow us at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are SB Nation's home for your UCF nights. Thanks as always to everyone on our staff. Make sure you pay attention to our Twitter feed especially, and of course the site every morning for Jeremy Brenner's newsletter as well. For all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you again later this week with our UCF Volleyball preview show. See you then.